Hi everyone, Carol again. So we've put our pages together for our little fabric journal, and we're now going to add a few extra little bits and pieces to just zhuzh up our signature. Alright, so I talked earlier in the previous video about glassine bags, envelopes, and even using the greaseproof paper. I've also got here a piece of patterned paper as well. So all I'm going to use is a glassine bag, an envelope and the patterned paper. I am just going to demonstrate to you about the greaseproof paper as well. So the glassine bag, I'm just basically going to fold it in half. And then I'm going to trim the very edge off here. And if you do that, sometimes, because the bottom edge of the bag has been folded over, this little flap bit will peel off, because otherwise it just forms a little bit of a flap. And I'm just going to peel mine off very carefully. And it doesn't matter if it leaves a little bit of residue, because I'm going to just show you something about that tomorrow. Right, so can you see it's just left a little bit of a rough edge there. You could leave it if you wanted, but I decided to take mine off, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with that tomorrow. The envelope, so opens up like this with a flap. I'm actually going to fold my envelope in half. And I'm also then going to open it back up, and not where the flap is, but where the top, or actually the bottom, but it will become the top. I'm going to trim that off so it then opens it up. So now you've got, it'll open up as a pocket there, but also by the time we've attached this into our pages, into our signature, you've also now got a little pocket there as well from the flap of the envelope. I did mention about adding paper bags. Now if you haven't got any paper bags, don't worry, because all you need is a piece of patterned paper. This is thin paper, and you know how we buy those magazines and they've got those freebie packs of papers in there, or the booklet of freebie papers in. That's all that this is. It's one of those. So that, I don't like that side, but I think that that side will go really nice in my book. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this just slightly beyond the halfway point, and then I'm going to fold this one over on top so that it just overlaps the paper a little. And then I'm going to use my glue, my PVA glue this time, because it's just paper to paper, so I don't need the all-purpose glue. This will be enough. I'm just putting a thin line of glue down that side and a thin line of glue on this side. Because these papers overlap, we need to make sure that the edges of the paper are glued down on top of each other, and then fold that over and stick that down. Now I've just got a little bit of an overlap there, so I'm just going to trim that off. And then I'm just going to get my circle punch. And on each long end, I'm just going to punch a half circle by turning my punch upside down so that I can see where I'm positioning it, and punch a half circle there, spin it round and do it on the other side. And this is now called a thumb hole. There we go. And then I'm going to fold that in half. Okay. Now with the greaseproof paper, you can't use glue because the because of it being grease proof, it's got the coating on it so that it won't allow you to use glue. It won't stick together. So you'll need the double-sided tape. So I've already folded it. Oh, I had trouble with this earlier. Let's see if I can. There we go. It's going to give me trouble again, isn't it? I can see it coming. I prepared this so that it wouldn't do this to me on camera. There we go. So the tape is now on that edge. And then I got this side ready, look. There we go. Yeah, tape's there. And so now we can fold that over on top of there. And then I could punch my thumb holes out there again, and then I've got another little pocket. I'm not going to use this one though. Now when I go through my pages, I have actually changed some around a little bit from when I last videoed it, because what you want to do is you want to have a look through and look for points of interest. Okay, so that really hasn't got a point of interest on that page. That one has, because it's got this little pocket. This one has, because it's got the colouring page. This one really hasn't got anything. This one has got the book page. This one has got the shorter page and the graph paper. And then you've got to the centre. Alright, so if we go through again, that page hasn't got a point of interest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the glassine bag. So I'm going to pop that in there. That's got a point of interest. That one has. That one hasn't. So this is where I'm going to pop this. So that when I pop that in there, it now forms a pocket for you to put stuff into. That one has. That one has. And then we get to the centre, and I'm going to put my envelope in the centre. Alright, so now I've got a pocket there at the top and the pocket from the flap. So that's my signature now set and ready. Now a lot of people who are new to making journals ask, do you decorate your pages before you put them into the cover, or do you decorate them afterwards? That is pure choice which you prefer to do. Some people prefer to decorate their pages up before they make it into the signature and then put it into their journal. Some people prefer to put the signature into the journal and then decorate it up. So it's entirely up to you. But there is one thing that I would actually suggest that you consider. If you're going to do any sewing on here, so if you're going to attach your lace and then stitch that lace in place, stitch any extra papers in place, then you would probably need to do that first before you make it up into your signature, because once this is made up, it's actually then quite difficult to get through the sewing machine. In this instance, I'm not going to do any sewing on the sewing machine with this. I'm just going to stick my lace in place with glue. I'm not going to stitch it, and so I can now make my signature up. Normally you would stitch your signature to the inside cover, but because we've got the elastic band in place, I'm just going to stitch the signature itself together. There are alternatives if you don't fancy stitching it up, and I'm going to cover those options with you as well. But what we do need to make sure is that all of our pages are lined up, and especially those that only come halfway down the page, we need to make sure that they're in the right place, whether they be at the bottom, whether they be at the top, or whether they be at the halfway point. So we need to make sure that they're in the right place. So I'll just check Yeah, that's in the right place. That is. This one, can you see it's a little bit low down? I actually want it central, so I'm just going to move that pink page up a little. There we go. And just make sure that the envelope is in the centre as well. Now at this point, this is where the likes of large paper clips or the bulldog clips come into play, because you can use those to clip your pages together. Now I'm not clipping it so that the pages are flat. I'm clipping it so that, can you see, I'm doing it so that it's slightly bent. So I'm not doing it completely flat. And again, everyone has their own little technique of how they do this. It doesn't mean that one's right and one's wrong. It's just that that's what that particular person has found has worked best for them. And I've clipped them so that I'm near the centre fold. I haven't put the clips over here out of the way. I've put them near the centre fold. Now I have a block of polystyrene. Some people use a book and they sit that, they open up the book and they sit that then inside of the book. I'm going to do mine onto the polystyrene, and I'm going to leave the pages slightly angled. Some people also measure, so that what they would do, have your ruler around the right way, Carol, so that what some people would do is they would find the centre point. So because we know this is 7 inches, the halfway point is 3.5. All right. Sorry, I missed a bit. Would be 3.5, and then they would measure 1 inch down, 1 inch down, and do it again. Now I've got to consider that if I do that 1 inch down, can you see I'm just going to clip the very edge of the envelope. So I actually probably want to do it a little bit higher up, so that I'm going to make sure that I can clip the whole of the envelope in place. The other thing that I'm going to do, so I'm just going to remove those clips and I'm going to flip that back. Because I would like to have the stitching inside and not through the envelope itself. So I'm actually going to do my stitching in there and then put the flap down afterwards. Okay, so we know that the 3.5 was the halfway point, so that's there. And I wanted to do it roughly 1 1/8 inches down, which will be there, and then it will be 1 1/8 inches up, which will be about there. So I've just marked, just with my little pokey tool, those 3 spots, because we're going to do a 3-hole pamphlet stitch. So I'm just going to poke down into all of my papers right the way through, so I can now let that go. So then I can pull that back out, poke that all the way through, and then poke that all the way through. I'm then going to use my sewing thread to stitch it up. Now this is a very strong thread, and various people again will use various different types of threads. Use what you have to hand, so long as it's a strong thread. It's no good having a thin weak thread like sewing cotton. And you need to make sure that the length of thread that you use is going to be enough to stitch all the way through the signature. So we're going to do, whoops, come on, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to do 4 lengths. That is more than enough. And the other thing that I then use is beeswax, and I just run my thread through the beeswax so that the thread is then coated, which gives it a little bit of extra protection on top. This is where, now as an embroiderer, I'll show myself up because I can't thread a needle. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to start in the centre, and I'm starting on the inside of the book, and I'm going to go down through that centre hole. But I'm not going to pull the thread all the way through. In fact, I'm just going to wrap it around that paper clip so that it's held out of the way just for the time being. I still can't pull on it too tight because it'll pull it off the paper clip, but it just holds it sort of roughly in place. And then coming back up through this hole here. So hopefully, ta-da! So I'm going to go through this hole here, back down into the centre hole, and then I'm going to come up, come back, I'm going to come up through this hole. So just turn it over, find where I've poked, come back up through the hole, and that's it.